Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Owens. Welcome back to A Cult of Misfits. If you're anything like me and you enjoy talking about things of the esoteric, about consciousness, the nature of reality, the inward journey, interdimensional beings, reincarnation, or even our Anunnaki overlords, consider following my podcast. You can listen on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or even Amazon Alexa. I also post a lot on Instagram and Twitter if you're interested in following A Cult of Misfits on either of those platforms. In today's transmission, I would like to talk about the hole. Where is he going with this? What kind of hole is he talking about? No, it's not there. Get your mind out of the gutter. It's we're talking about an episode of Rick and Morty that I want to sort of dissect and unpack because it has a lot to do with the nature of reality itself, and it dives deep into what it takes to face your fears, which I really enjoy talking about. So, themes of acceptance and fears of uncertainty and those things. I also want to talk about a podcast that I just discovered thanks to my brother. Shout out to Carter. It's called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. So I didn't know that much about JK Rowling. I've never seen her interviewed. So it was fascinating from that aspect. But also, they dive into topics about transgender community and pronouns and seeing things from other perspectives that I want to sort of unpack as well. And lastly, I want to sort of continue this overarching conversation of freedom in our lives, creating more freedom in my life, and this attitude that I've sort of this foundational attitude that I have in my life of don't tell me what to do, and how I respect other people in in society that just sort of loudly proclaim, I'm going to do it my way, don't tell me what to do. So we'll sort of dive into that. We'll talk about Dave Chappelle and Elon Musk and unpack that as well. So let's talk about Rick and Morty. Now, if you're a little uneasy because you've never seen the show, don't worry about it. We're just going to use it as a metaphor, okay? So stay with me. You don't have to even be a fan of the show or sci-fi in general, but um, I'm so thankful to the good Lord above that I discovered Rick and Morty because it's such a good show. It's sort of it just aligns with a lot of my beliefs and me questioning the universe and what does this all mean and the nature of reality and all these things that I love talking about and perhaps you love talking about as well. In this one episode, I think that it was the season finale, in fact, this new season. And Rick and Morty are just the main characters. We won't even dive into that, but Rick and Morty are the main characters, and they sort of go on these sci-fi adventures through space and time. They sort of have technology that can basically do anything. And so they sort of have these sci-fi adventures, right? So they're sort of walking along. They go on so many adventures that they're a little bit jaded, and nothing really excites them anymore. They were just sort of, these things were kind of trying to scare them, and they were like, been there, done that. That doesn't really scare me anymore. And so they're like, man, I just wish we could have a good old fashioned scare like we used to back in the good old days. Remember when we were scared of things? And so this character overhears them talking and says, "Hey, friends, want something scary? I'll show you the scariest thing in the whole galaxy." And they're like, "Well, yeah, sign us up. Let's do that." So anyway, this character introduces them to the hole, right? And next to the hole, this creepy looking hole in the ground, uh, is a is a cork board on the wall of people who have gone into the hole. And there's only like two or three people who have done it, right? So there's not a lot of people that have done the hole. It's kind of dingy looking and creepy and scary. And it's like, ugh. And the guy's like, the scariest thing in the whole galaxy is inside of this hole. So go right ahead, friends. So, anyways, what they learn about the hole is that the hole manifests your fears, right? It creates a reality, a simulation that you put yourself into, and it knows what your greatest fears are. And what's explained to the main characters, Rick and Morty, is that the whole feeds upon your fears. So it's kind of a win-win situation, right? The whole gets to eat your fears, and you get to come out of the process fearless, assuming that you are able to face your fears. Okay. And I just started laughing because it goes it goes a lot in line with some of my beliefs around the nature of reality and what's happening here in this 3D material realm that we found ourselves in, right? I often talk about how we're stuck in this cycle and recycle, this of rebirth over and over again, in this place that is very likely a simulation that I often dive into, right? And these are all just there's so many of these metaphors that you can see in pop culture, but also in the ancient scripts and the it goes back to antiquity where the ancients thousands of years ago were also talking about these types of things, right? And so Rick and Morty are talking about going into this hole. Like, okay, well, I don't know. It sounds kind of creepy, but like maybe it's a good thing, right? Maybe it's a good thing to face our fears. So anyway, they jump into the hole, and it quickly becomes evident to them that they're in sort of this fake simulation thing that is meant to propagate fears in order to flush their fears to the surface so that they may face them, right? Because they're immediately starting to see things that scare the shit out of them that are just coming up all the time. You see where this is going? This is why this is a good conversation, right? Because I talk about facing our fears so often because a part of my journey personally has been a journey of facing my fears, right? I realize that all of these obstacles in my life are just these blocks of fear that I have placed with my own mind, right? And that once I can somehow, some way learn to face and conquer these fears, then I will become fearless. Wouldn't that be great? Right? We see these superheroes that we watch in these Marvel movies or whatever that are completely fearless. These are the ones that run towards their fears and don't run away from the things that scare them, right? The big scary monster comes and the Marvel superheroes will run towards those fears. And so digging into this idea of are we in a simulation or a matrix or whatever you want to call it, a dream, this bubble material world that we're in. There's just a lot of evidence pointing to this. That's why I talk about it so often, is because I'm having to reprogram my mind in so many ways and my belief systems and how I view the world around me. Because I'm always in seeker mode. I'm always trying to figure out like what the hell's going on around here? What is this place? Right. And the ancient wisdom points to this is all a simulation. Many of the ancients, right? Going into all of the different systems around the world, different continents that supposedly never talk to each other. They all sort of have this idea that none of this is real. Now, depending on who you talk to, that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I choose to view it neutrally as it just is. That's what the ancients also talked about. It's just accepting it for what it is. Well, okay, sure. We're in a simulation. Great. Now what? And so part of my journey has been coming to acceptance with that none of this is potentially real in a way that I think that it's real, right? Quote unquote real. You get it. And this is something that the characters, Rick and Morty, recognized in the episode as well. At some point, they realized, you know what, you can't really be scared of things if you just know that we're just in the hole, right? We're just in this Earth 3D simulation or whatever. So why am I freaking out about this stuff? And so once they started realizing the game, how things kind of work, right? Which is what I'm always trying to work out. Like, what are the rules to this realm? What happens when I do this? What happens when I don't do this? How does it affect my life? How does it affect things? And so once they realize that none of this is, really real, then they kind of felt more free to explore things a bit, right? To face their fears with less hesitancy. So Morty sees this giant creepy spider on the ground and he runs towards it. Everybody's freaking out in the kitchen. His dad is in the kitchen freaking out about this huge spider. And so Morty lets this giant creepy spider crawl up his arm and he's freaking out the whole. He's like, he's getting scared, but he's like, this is how I face my fears. This is what must happen in order to beat the hole, in order to beat the game, to beat the matrix, to beat whatever the hell this is that we found ourselves in. Right? So the spider crawls up him, and I'm sorry for you arachnophobes, but he crawls into his mouth. The spider crawls into his mouth, and he swallows the spider. And okay, there, I did it. He's still alive. He didn't die. Like, I'm not scared of that anymore. I really resonated with this episode because it mirrored what my path has been the past several years, and maybe your path too, that you can relate to this as well. Specifically, the spider thing. I grew up in a household where my mom was terrified of spiders and huge phobia, and that transferred to us children. We were also terrified, my sister and I. My sister to this day still is terrified of spiders, and there's no judgment there. It's not like, ha ha ha, you're scared of spiders, you're so weak. It's none of that. Um, but there's these deep ingrained fears in us, right? Which is a whole different topic about phobias and why are we scared of water, the oceans, or heights, or spiders, or snakes, or any of these things. It's this primal reptilian, something that's going on that's deep within our DNA, right? Or deep within our reincarnation cycle from past lives or past traumas, etc. It's sort of interesting to unpack these phobias and fears. But I had a deep-seated phobia of spiders, and so I decided one day that I was going to face this fear. This is early on in my journey where I was like, well, it seems reasonable that I can do that. So I'm just gonna, next time I see a big wolf spider, we have wolf spiders in this area, uh, and they're terrifying. They're the size of, I was gonna say a horse. They're very large. And I know for people who live in Australia, they laugh at somebody's, in me saying that I have a large scary spider. They're like, oh mate. But I was like, do I dive into an Australian accent? Not going to do it. We're just going to stop there. The next time I saw one of these huge, terrifying, dare I say, demonic beings, spiders, I approached it with great caution. I was shaking in my boots. I was scared out of my mind, and I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Like beads of sweat coming down my forehead, and I'm like, I'm getting emotional just talking about it because I'm getting flashbacks from it. It's just like my hands are shaking. I'm getting a biological response just talking about it, right? But I just wanted to be in the same room as the spider, just to look at it. Okay, it's not jumping off the wall. It's not attacking my face. It's not trying to bore a hole through my ear like any of these nightmare scenarios that I always come up with, right? Sorry for those of you that I just implanted a new nightmare, but have fun with that. But I had this process of just being around it, right? And then the next time I did it, maybe a week later or whatever, I said, okay, here's another spider. This is just the whole, the matrix, giving me another opportunity to face my fear. Thank you, whole. Thank you for another opportunity to face my fear on spiders. So then now instead of just being in the room with it, now I want to get close to it. So I put a glass cup over it so that I could just look at it, knowing it's not going to try to crawl down my throat or run away and hide somewhere, God forbid, right? Just plotting my demise in the dark corner underneath the washer, dryer, wherever it runs under, right? But as wolf spiders are known to do, guys, these are just scientific facts. They plot our demise. They they actively try to think of ways to terrify us. These are just spider facts. Just spider facts. So I got myself to a place where I could put a glass cup over it and just observe it without freaking the fuck out, right? And so I did that several times. So it's just this process of slowly, you know, getting myself to a place where I'm more and more comfortable with it. But the only way to do that is to face the fear, to go through that fire, to experience the fear for what it is, so that it may be transcended or transmuted, as as the alchemists say. And so the characters did what I did in my own life that I resonate with, is they just started running towards their fears. Morty, the kid, he's the kid in the scenario, right? He's realizing, okay, in order to get out of the hole, like I got to face my fears. So he starts ratcheting it up more and more and more each time, doing gradually more and more scary things, according to Morty, right? And the more awkward it is, the more uncomfortable it makes him, the more he doesn't want to do it, the more he pushes on and says, great, let's do it. Okay, let's just do this thing, rip off the band-aid, right? Just to get it over with, to experience it. And so after doing this several times, Morty's like, okay, I did it. I faced several of my fears. And there's this moment, this scene where he's sort of like looking up to the heavens and saying, okay, whole, whoever's listening, like, I faced my fears. Hello, can you hear me? Like, I did it. I'm done, right? Like, can I get out of the hole now? Like, I think I did it. I'm done, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with the universe or God or my higher self, right? Just like, okay, I did what you told me to. Like, I faced my fear. Like, we're done here, right? Wrap that up real good. Crickets, silence from the universe, silence from my guardian angels, just kind of like, ugh, nope, you're not done yet, buddy. Right? And then they'd face another fear in the show. And they're like, okay, we're done here, right? Nope, not yet. Right. And then they started questioning it, like, okay, maybe it's not just these phobias, right? Maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe it's things that go inward a little bit more, right? Those things that perhaps we've buried real deep, right? Fear of letting other people down, fear that you're not good enough, fear that you're mimicking the negative traits of your parents that you didn't ever want to do, but now you're finding you're doing it. That sort of these are the sorts of things that were addressed in the show, right? Letting go of fears of uncertainty. That's certainly something that I've been facing these last several years, right? Of letting go of fear of what's around the corner. I've never been here before. I'm in uncharted territory. I'm scared out of my mind. What do I do? Help! Ah! But I've been learning to trust and have faith in that mechanism, whatever it is, the universe, God, the matrix, the whole, the simulation. I'm discovering that there are rules and mechanisms to this thing, and I like playing around with them. And I've been learning to really embrace uncertainty. And it's been extremely challenging for any of you who've attempted it, letting go of my need to know what's going to happen next. That's terrifying for the human, right? Matt Owens is pissing his pants when he doesn't know what he's doing, what's around the corner. Ugh, what am I supposed to do next? But the divine I am knows that everything's going to be okay, right? That the growth happens, the unfolding of my life, of my soul, of my spirit, of all that I am, is discovered in the scariest depths of my darkest shadows. And then I won't be able to move beyond those fears until I go into those dark shadows that scare the piss out of me. Because in doing that, I'm setting myself free. I'm embracing this freedom, but I'm embracing fearlessness. I'm incorporating fearlessness into who I am. If you had talked to me several years ago, or in my entire adulthood, saying like, "Are you fearless?" I'd be like, "No, are you out of your mind?" No, I'm scared of lots of things. If I'm being honest with you, I'm scared of lots of things. There's a very long list of things I'm scared of, and so I don't know if in this lifetime, in this matrix, if we're ever meant to transcend those fears, because they're always there, hovering in the background, reoccurring, just to continue to keep those skills sharp, right? Keep that fearlessness in check. There's always something that's going to test that boundary. Because just when I start settling in and getting all comfortable, saying, okay, I'm all fearless now, checked off all the things on my list that scare me, well, boom. That's when the simulation sends me something new that scares the shit out of me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that unlocked something I didn't know. Okay, hi. Ha! That scares me. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Where'd you come from? Hi. I thought that I had conquered all my fears, but here's another one. Here we go. And it starts to become a practice. I start to enjoy the adventure, the challenge of it all. It's not to say it's not terrifying and extremely difficult and excruciating spiritually and mentally and physically and all the things. But that's why we're here, I believe. this whole place, this material realm, we're told from the ancients to mainstream science saying that none of this is really real. So I started saying, okay, I'm going to start being I'm going to start taking more calculated risks in my life. I'm going to start facing some fears in my life and see what happens. And I found that as I start doing that, my life becomes more expansive. My growth is insane, right? And just when I start settling in, there's another growth opportunity. Just when I think I got everything figured out, like, oh, okay, I got this whole enlightenment thing down, right? Like, good one. Then the universe says, that's hilarious. We got a curveball for you, bud. But the more that I start doing it, the better I get at it, right? The more I practice these things, practicing running towards my fears, facing and conquering them, recognizing them for what they are, thanking the matrix for the experience. Thank you for yet another opportunity to face my fear of uncertainty, my fear of the unknown, fears around stepping outside of my comfort zone, fears about setting up boundaries in my life. Oh, right. There's also a lot of acceptance in all of this. I had to learn to accept things for what they are. This is what a lot of the Eastern philosophies and the Eastern wisdom talks about from all of the places. This idea of acceptance, accepting the uncomfortability, accepting things that are out of my control. Ooh, that was a toughie. Accepting things that I can't control, because Matt Owens, that guy wants to try to control everything. Poor guy. That's why he was stressed out all the time until I showed him the way. Right? I feel like this is my Omega speaking. In a previous episode, I talked about my higher self. I call the Omega. I can feel when the Omega is coming through. I believe there's this larger story of merging with divinity, dissolving that veil of separation. Matrix means womb. The human is in the womb while the Omega is on the outside in the real world, lovingly guiding us from beyond. Right? And I think that it's about merging the realms, merging the 3D with the 5D, or the heavenly realm with the earthly realm, or as above, so below, all of these concepts of accepting the divinity that we are. Accepting that things are out of our control for a reason. It's all a part of the simulation. It's so much easier to just laugh when these trials and tribulations come into our life. I'm not saying that, it's not every time, it's a practice, right? But I find myself, as Rick and Morty did in the episode, when something comes up, to just kind of laugh and say, well, it's obvious what this is. This is just the matrix. This is just the universe giving me another opportunity to face my fear. So thank you. Right? I've started actively putting myself into these situations that make me uncomfortable. Like creating these videos, for example, creating these videos and podcasts and audio and all of these things, spilling my soul, right? Becoming vulnerable. I was not a very vulnerable person my whole life, up until recently, 5 years ago or so. This is what Morty does in the episode. He intentionally um, humiliates himself. He puts himself up on a stage where they're doing a play, and he's completely naked and acting like a buffoon, and he's just accepting it. Like, well, they're all mocking me, and I don't care. I'm going to continue to put myself into these scenarios until it just dissolves, and I don't care what they think about me. And I can relate to that so hard. Not just prancing around up on stage naked, guys, because that's something that definitely no. But putting myself into these situations where I am transparent, where I am vulnerable, where I open myself up and let other people see things that I don't want other people to see because I'm embarrassed of those parts of myself. I don't want to share the bits and pieces about myself that I don't like about myself. Part of my journey early on also was getting over my body issues. It's not just for women. I had a lot of issues about my body, not just food eating disorder situations, but just I hated my fucking body. Right? I just thought I was a disgusting blob, and for many years I was. I lost about 75 pounds years ago, and so I was a lot larger than I used to be. But I always hated my body, right? And I had to work through those issues and learn to love myself, right? Learn to stop caring what other people think about my body, because I realized that most people don't care what shirt you're wearing. Most people aren't looking at your love handles. Sorry, you're looking at your love handles. You're looking in the mirror and calling yourself fat. Right now, I don't want to brush over that. I know that there's lots of people who have had bullies in their life, or parents who tell them they're not good enough, or skinny enough, or I don't want to brush over that because I understand it. I accept it. I've experienced it. I won't dive into it. But I'm just sort of broad stroking this here. And it was just this larger concept of acceptance, accepting my body for what it was and loving it. Right? Not caring what other people think about it, not caring about other people's opinions about my personality or how I say things or don't say things, right? I had to really lean into the concept of I'm just going to do what I want. Don't tell me what to do. Right? I've sort of had that gruff exterior of don't tell me what to do. Right? I always was abrasive towards authority. As my parents or my teachers or my managers and bosses, etc., will tell you. I've never been someone who felt comfortable with having other people tell me what to do, which perhaps had something to do with my divorce on a larger scale. Right? I just don't do well with that. And I used to view that as a weakness. I used to be embarrassed about that, and I've come to embrace it. But that's just part of who I am. I really have really leaned into these last couple of years, especially. I really leaned into radical freedom in my life. Once I started diving into the spiritual, I started hearing these communities and spiritual people talking about manifestation. And so these last several years, I've been really leaning hard into manifesting more freedom in my life. And it's been unfolding beautifully. Right? And rather than focusing on the things in my life that I don't currently have freedom, where there's not a lot of wiggle room, I choose to focus on all of the freedoms that have expanded in my life over the last couple of years. The freedom to do whatever I want, to say whatever I want, to be however I want is so freeing to me. Right? The freedom to express myself in any way that I want without fear of other people's response to it. About leaning into authenticity. This is just who I am, and not giving myself a license to be a complete reckless asshole. Right? But to respect everybody and everything respectfully and lovingly, but to do things my way. It's a very Frank Sinatra vibe. I've always looked up to people like that, like Frank Sinatra, who just say, I'm going to do things my fucking way. You're either on board or you're not, and I'm okay either way. I get why people don't like that, but I also get why people flock to it, right? People flock to authenticity. People, that's why I believe, without getting too political, why people admire Donald Trump, because in many ways he's just unabashedly Donald Trump. Right? He doesn't try to hide who he is. He doesn't try to, he's not embarrassed by any of it. And there's a lot of people that really resonate with that, myself included. Without diving into politics or specific topics, I just have always really looked up to people who just say, nope, no, thank you. That doesn't go in line with my values or who I am or what I want to do with my life. Thanks, but no thanks. I was recently listening to a podcast about, I can't even remember, honestly. It was about global warming and geological shifts, and it was a very science-y episode. And I like to try to see things from different perspectives, right? That's why I like to listen to geologists from both sides, mainstream geologists, and also, um, alternative theories about how things work, right? Which in a way is growing and starting to become more mainstream in itself, which is interesting. But I just try to gather as much information as I can from as many sides as I can, and I try to just come to my own conclusions from there, right? So I was listening to this scientist, and he was talking about warming and cooling trends or whatever, and he was talking about research and the things that he's and his team specifically are researching, and the funding, that what he does with the funding, right? And he just straight up said, "Look, there's a lot of people that come to me and want to give us funding and want to give us money, but they also have an agenda." There's a lot of people that want to come to us as scientists that have an agenda, which I don't know if a lot of people are aware of. I certainly wasn't. I was like, well, sure, but that makes sense, I suppose, right? As with lobbyists in Congress or the government or the medical or pharmaceutical industries, where there's just a lot of money and sway, and everybody has an agenda, right? And you can label that as good or bad, but we're still just talking about perspectives, aren't we? From the perspective of the pharmaceutical industry, they don't have a problem with it, right? So anyway, what I really respect about this science guy, no, it was not Bill Nye, who I coincidentally met years ago because I lived in the Seattle area and he's from the Seattle area. So anywho, the science guy was like, look, I want to be very, very, very clear. If you have an agenda or you want to tell me what research I am supposed to do because you've given me money, I don't want your money. And that's a ballsy thing to say, because in the academic field, they are often desperately in need of funding in order to fund this research, right? They have to have some, whether it's a university or a special group or whatever that has this money, think tanks or whatever that fund these projects. They often have an agenda. And he said, I don't care what your agenda is. I'm doing the research that I want to do, that I find interesting, that I find useful for the betterment of humanity, in my opinion. And if you would like to fund that, great. We will happily accept your money and we will continue to do what we're doing. But if you want me to start researching something else, keep it. Not interested. And I stood up and started clapping. That's how I've often lived my life as well. It reminded me of when my now ex-wife and I were getting married back in the day. We had lots of family members who were willing to graciously and kindly donate, I should say, gift money to us for the wedding, right? Whether it was chipping in for the food or flowers or what have you. There's just a lot of expenses, obviously, for weddings, which are all unnecessary, in my opinion. I was down to just go get married at the courthouse, but that's that's for a therapy conversation, guys. But anyway, there's a lot of money, people that were wanting to gift us money, and I had to take a similar stance because there was often an agenda behind the money. From certain family members, they would say, well, we're willing to give you this, but we don't want you to spend it that way. We don't want you to spend it on that. We prefer that you spend it on this. And I said, well, let me tell you a little story. If you'd like to give me a gift out of the kindness of your heart, I'm going to spend it however the heck I want to. And if that offends you, or that's not how you want me to spend the quote unquote gift that you're giving me, you go ahead and keep that. And this was at a time when we didn't have a lot of money. So we really could have used that money. It's not like we were filthy rich. $1,000, $500, that to us was a lot of money. And so to tell certain family members, go fuck yourself if you think I'm going to do it your way, or you're not going to give me $1,000, then you can keep it. And that was really hard for my ex-wife to hear, which is maybe another reason why things weren't intended to stay married forever, right? But this is what I mean about being vulnerable and just talking about things in this way about my life, of dropping the curtain a little bit and being willing to talk about these things, right? Because I think that many people can relate to the things that we talk about here. So I just always looked up to people like that. It reminded me of Dave Chappelle when Comedy Central, when he had his show, they offered him, an ungodly amount of money. It was like $50 million or something at the time, which was unheard of at the time, right? And for his own personal reasons, he said, "No, thank you, I'm done." And it was the number one show on the network, if you remember, and it was just like he was huge, he was blowing up, he was at this peak, and he walked away from it all and went to Africa for a couple of years and had a spiritual journey of sorts, right? But um, I really respected him for doing that, for saying, "No, I don't care how much money you're going to offer me. I don't want to do it." Right? I have to do me. I have to do it my way. So sorry. And things often I have found from watching these people who live their life like this, it always turns around, right? People in their families or society or the tabloids or newspapers or media are like, "Oh, how could he have done that? What an idiot. Like, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Are you insane? That's a large amount of money," right? It's so hard to face those pressures of everybody's outside influence and opinions about how you're living or not living your life correctly according to who. I had to start living my life for me. Freedom. Same thing with Elon Musk. I admire him for having those same qualities. Where he recently told Disney to go fuck themselves collectively. Bob, whatever Bob is currently the head of Disney right now, Disney was, um, actively trying to screw over Twitter. In case you haven't been following it, and I've been loosely following it, right? But um, Twitter has sort of been doing. I'm sorry, Disney has been sort of doing some underhanded things to Twitter, and Elon Musk wasn't happy about that. And Disney represented millions of dollars in potential ad revenue. And Elon Musk said, "Fuck you guys. I don't like what you're doing. Keep your fucking ad money. I don't. I'm not. I will not be held over a barrel and told what to do by any corporation, person, or anybody for that matter. Go fuck yourself." And I stood up and applauded again. Right? That's what I do. So I just feel like I'm in this place in my life where I am constantly looking to manifest and unfold more freedoms in my life. They're just shackles. This is how I believe that I am going to cultivate the 5D, cultivate this new earth or heaven on earth or transcendence or whatever you want to talk about, is by facing my fears actively. And in doing so, I'm pursuing more freedom for myself. And I was recently having a conversation with somebody, and they were saying, "Well, are you afraid of anything?" And I didn't know how to answer that, because the answer is yes, of course. I'm not going to act all, "Oh, I'm not afraid of anything." But I had to. I didn't know how to answer it exactly, because there are things that scare me, but they don't scare me like they used to. When the universe or the whole presents me with something that scares me nowadays, I've worked on it so many times in so many different ways, shapes, and forms that I'm like, okay, okay, I've dealt with this before. Let me go back to my notes, right? um, and see, like, okay, what did I do the last time this popped up in my life? The last time this scared me, I dealt with it by meditating and telling myself that everything always works out, and reminding myself that I have a divine hand that is leading me and guiding me through this, reminding myself that the pendulum always swings, reminding myself that nothing, it's bringing me to tears, that nothing lasts forever, reminding myself that fear is just something that is in my mind that I've concocted. These are the things that I remind myself of, and then I start to come out of the fog and the mist of fear, this fake shit. And I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, okay, okay, okay. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to worry about here, right? Being thankful for the fear, thankful for the experience, because it's making me stronger. It's making me unstoppable. If nothing can scare me, then I'm unstoppable. What a way to live life. I would have never thought it was even possible to have these conversations, let alone actually becoming unstoppable, becoming fearless. These things would have seemed impossible to me 5 years ago. If I had told younger versions of myself that, like, hey, we're going to conquer all these things that are stressing you out and freaking you out and putting a knot the size of a bowling ball in your stomach every night, and like acid reflux and stress and all these things would melt away eventually, I'd be like, okay, but I don't see how that's possible. But here I am on the other side of many of those fears, and they just don't affect me the way that they used to. By following, it's not like my genius method for conquering life, guys. This is just like what the ancients have been telling us for thousands of years, right? This is at the core of these secret societies and mystical circles of mystical people around the world, whether it's the Egyptians or the Mesopotamians or the mystics in the Jewish tradition or the Sufis, or all of these mystics. They had this wisdom, they had this knowledge, they had this connection to the all that is, that in many ways we've lost over time, since the Great Flood, perhaps, right? We've lost this connection to nature, to Gaia, to Mother Earth, to the cosmos, to the everything, to the divinity that we are, to the divine spark, to a lot of it. But also, as the ancients tell us, this is just the cycle we're meant to be in right now. And we've been here before, and we will be here again. And here's how to get through these dark cycles. It's all spelled out for us. It's really in plain sight. Back in the day, it was in these ancient mystery schools. It was only for the select few, the adepts, the ones that, the shamans and the mystics that had access to this stuff, the priests, etc. And I feel like in many ways that barrier has been dropped in the modern age now that we have access to all of this information. Don't you find it? Well, maybe you don't even know it exists, but I find it very interesting that the Nag Hammadi library, for example, these ancient scripts that were left out of the Bible that the early Christians, around 100 AD, for example, um, these ancient scripts that nobody knew even existed were discovered in the 1940s in some cave by some goat herder in Egypt or Afghanistan, or I don't even remember. Nag Hammadi, I think it's in Egypt. Um, so the Nag Hammadi library is these ancient scripts, and I think it's so interesting that they were unknown to humanity for almost 2,000 years, and then boop, they suddenly appear, right? Or all of these ancient tombs and pyramids and stuff that were discovered in the 19th century that just were hidden and obscured from humanity for 2,000 years, and then all of a sudden, boop, hi. Now they're making themselves known cosmically, right? Why are they coming up now? I think it's because we're in these cycles. And as our consciousness starts lifting again to a higher frequency, a higher vibration, these things start uh, appearing to us because they are of the same vibration. We start digging deeper into ourselves, into our past, into our history. We get ourselves to a place where our consciousness can start asking these questions of where did we come from? Start questioning our belief systems, questioning our religions, questioning these power structures that we have in our societies. and our religions, right? Questioning these things. We have these cycles, and as we start gaining more and more knowledge, we start expanding ourselves and opening ourselves, not just intellectually, our human minds, but also our hearts in a spiritual way. We start opening up and blossoming more and more, like the beautiful lotus coming out of the mud, right? Any analogy you like. I think that we're coming out of this cycle, out of these yugas, these grand cosmic cycles. And so I think about it in a positive way. I think that we're in the darkness now. I think that we're in a dark cycle. I think that we're in an upside down world, this clown world, or whatever you want to say, where I truly believe that there are dark forces on this planet that are in many ways taking over society, but taking over our minds. And I think that it has to go back to the Rick and Morty episode where the whole feeds upon their fears. I do think that there is a presence on this planet that feeds upon our fears. Once you start digging into it, once you start looking at it from that framework, you start to think like, well, that does actually make sense when you look at it from that perspective, that there is some sort of an entity in a way that we can't really comprehend that is keeping us in a fearful state, right? You can call it the 1% or the elites or whatever you want, but I think that it's in their best interest to keep the populace in a state of fear for reasons, for spiritual reasons that we can't fully comprehend, right? And that the way that we break free from these cycles, break free from not just the 1% or the entities or whatever you want to call it, but breaking free from these reincarnation cycles. And the ancients all have a playbook telling us exactly how to do it, right? It's been there for thousands of years, right? But it's there for people with eyes to see and ears to hear. And my whole life, I did not have eyes to see, right? And it's an ever evolving process. This spiritual sight that I'm talking about with the eyes to see. It's a constant scraping away of the scales, metaphorically, from my eyes that are allowing me to see things in a new way, see things with new perspectives, right? Things that I never would have thought to look into before. That's the beauty of this podcast that I was talking about earlier at the beginning, with that my brother recommended, about JK Rowling, the witch trials of JK Rowling. It's so interesting because it really focuses on different perspectives. I didn't know that much about J.K. Rowling or her perspectives on transgender topics, or sexuality or pronouns or any of those things. All I ever knew was what I heard from her uh, in the tabloids or in the news or in the media, saying what a terrible person she is, right? How she's homophobic or transphobic, as the media often likes to label people nowadays. I find that people like to throw around those labels rather than realizing that there's just a different perspective, right? And J.K. Rowling really laid it out in such a beautiful way. If you're interested, I suggest you listen to the podcast. It's only like 6 episodes long or something. It's just kind of a short series that's really well done. The lady who is doing it, the interviews and the segments, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but you can look it up. She was a former member of the it's going to slip my mind now, the Baptist church that would always spew all of the hate and about homosexuals and the army or the government or just homosexuals in general. Uh, it's right on the tip of my tongue, but anyways, I'm sure you know what. Westboro, thank you. It's Westboro Baptist Church. So she was a member of the Westboro Baptist Church, and she kind of had a turnaround in her life, and she started to see things differently, and has an interesting perspective because she can see the hyper religious side of things that she grew up in, and now she can also see the other perspective outside of that, right? And so J.K. Rowling's perspective on the transgender topics and pronouns is really beautiful because it was very balanced and nuanced and very loving, and it's in many ways similar to how I view things. In Other people are more than I don't care how other people live their lives. You can say you're a man or a woman or straight or gay or whatever label you. That's fine with me. I couldn't care less. Live your own life, but but that doesn't mean that I can't have a different opinion than you. If you if you were born a man, for example, I was thinking about this a lot lately because I didn't really have an opinion about it. I just sort of I don't follow the news, and so I just sort of Hadn't been thinking about it, but the more I start thinking about how things are just um, getting real interesting in this world, right nowadays, especially ratcheting up, I started analyzing some of these things to me that, and thinking about what's the loving response to this. And upon reflection, I started thinking that somebody who's biologically born a male uh, with the genitalia that comes along with that, if that male wants to declare himself female or change their name or identity or anything like that, I have no issue with that. And I will love and respect you and not mock you or try to convince you that you're wrong or show you that my way is right. None of those things. I've learned these past few years of my journey that I never try to, I try not to get myself into a position where I'm trying to defend myself and my beliefs. And I never want to try to push my beliefs down your throat. You either agree with me or not, and I'm okay with that either way. But just because you call yourself a woman or a man doesn't necessarily make you that, in my opinion. And that's simply my opinion. And that was also JK Rowling's opinion and many other people's opinions, right? And I think that the higher position, the higher frequency, the higher path to take on this is to see things from both sides. Because while I disagree that if you're biologically born a male and you now want to call yourself a female, I can understand why you want to do that. I've listened to people who are transgender. I've listened to them explain their frustrations and their fears and some of the things that they've dealt with in their life, and I do that to see their perspective. I want to know why are they doing this? Why do they believe that? What's the thoughts behind this? What's the explanation? And I want to listen to the stories. I know that I used to be very closed-minded in earlier versions of Matt Owens, and very closed-minded. I knew what was right and wrong, and I didn't want to hear the other opinion. And I know many people like that in my life now who, if you want to get extreme and talk about like flat earth, there are many people who will just stick their fingers in their ears and say, la, 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 I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. It's nonsense. It's stupid. It's idiotic. It's a waste of my time to even hear that perspective. And that blows my mind now. Now that I can see things differently, I'm like, how can you be so close minded as to not just be willing to hear the other perspective? You can then make a determination. You can then have a belief that says that that's hogwash. I don't believe that the earth is flat, but at least now you've heard the other side. But to just want to censor it, shut it down, delete it, block it, not look at it, not want to have other people look at it because we don't want other people to be brainwashed with this nonsense. That's anti-intellectualism. That's anti that's that goes against wanting to learn more about the world around you. It's anti-scientific. It's anti lots of things. So it's anti, um, it's just a very closed off perspective. But the higher perspective is saying like, well, I've been there and get it. I get why you're not willing to look, right? Because it's really difficult to question one's belief system. I had to go through that as well as part of my awakening or dark night of the soul or going within, all of those things, right? Of questioning, why do I believe these things? Questioning God, questioning the nature of reality itself, questioning my thoughts and beliefs on everything. And there are those that are not there yet, and that's okay, right? We're all on different paths. A part of my journey was realizing that other people's souls might not have signed up for the same shit that you did. Right? Like I'm on this path of discovery and growth and expansion and questioning everything and looking within, just uh, change in my life, going outside of my comfort zone, facing my fears. Not everybody is cut out for that. Not just cut out for it, but that's not why they're here, right? You're a lot of times in the spiritual community, we all assume that we're all on this ascension process. And perhaps in the broader cosmic sense, we are. Maybe our souls are ever expanding, which I do happen to believe. But maybe this lifetime, this reincarnation, you and your soul are meant to experience certain things that other people aren't meant to experience in this go round. And to learn to accept that, learn to let that go. I had to. Not everybody is meant to be woken up. Okay? I believe there's a divine hand behind all of this. And everybody's awakening will happen when it's meant to happen. I'm no longer trying to red pill anybody. I'm no longer trying to wake people up. I'm no longer trying to show people all of the evils and darkness in the world, you know, child and human trafficking and the tunnels and the deep state and the communists and all the scary stuff. Bill Gates and the adrenochrome drinkers and the secret system, all the things. I had to learn that in my own life as a part of my own journey, because I was there. I went deep, guys, into the QAnon stuff, and I went deep. I went hard because that's how I roll. I went deep and I went hard, and I had to go through that for many reasons, and I'm so glad that I did because it's all perspective, seeing different people's perspectives, right? Why do some people believe this? And it's really hard to not get roped into those things, especially things that are social media related or like QAnon, where it's just like it's real easy to get programmed as humans. It's real easy to get roped in and brainwashed by real simple stuff. So it's a delicate process. It's walking along that razor's edge of not allowing myself to dive too deeply because I can get trapped, right? It's like the La Brea tar pits. Like I want to get close, but if I dip my toe in too much, like bye, I'm turning into a fossil. Um, so it's about not letting it overtake my identity. Right now, I'm a patriot. Now I'm a freedom fighter. Now I'm a truth seeker. Now I'm a red pillar. All these things are not who I am. I am divinity experiencing the human form. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I am not a QAnoner. I am not a flat earther. I am not an American. I am not white. I am none of those things. I'm fucking divinity in human form. And all of these things are here to help me face my fears and to expand my fucking consciousness. When you start to see things from this perspective and this framework, it changes everything. It did for me because it reframed how I live my life. Like, what am I doing? Why am I getting wrapped up in these stupid fucking debates that don't matter? Why am I getting stressed out about the price of gas or taxes or what the government is or isn't doing? It's stressing me out and freaking me out, and it's not doing anything for me. It no longer serves me. And I got to this place in my life where I started shedding the things in my life that no longer served me and getting really wrapped up in what the government was doing was no longer serving me. Nobody was waking up because of what I could see or not see or alarm the people as to what the government's doing or these trafficking circles or these, entities or long list of scary shit. Well, the more that you focus on these things, I had to tell myself, the more that I focus on these things, the more that they become a part of my reality. Our minds are extremely powerful, and what we give energy to, what we give our thoughts to, creates our fucking reality. So if you are anything like me and you're focusing nonstop on all of the bad things that they were doing to us, chemtrails and poison and plastic, microplastics and genetic manipulation and whatever you want to dive into. I'm not making fun of any of it. I mean, I kind of am because it's sort of silly when you think about it like this. And I dove into deep into all of those things, and I believe many of them, but I don't focus on them because they tend to scare me. Because they're out of my control. I can't do anything about child sex trafficking. I can't do anything about what the elites are doing. I can't do anything about the elections or any of that stuff. It's all out of my control. And I had to learn that as a human being, that really stresses me out and scares me out. So I had to learn to accept the world as it is. Accept the government and what they're doing. Accept it. Otherwise, I'm living in a state of fear, scared about what they're going to do. until they start doing things, until things start going my way, or the government's, now they're the good guys because they're doing what I think is best. But then what happens when the next guy gets into office, right? The next dictator, or the people on the other side of the party. Well, now you're all bent out of shape again. So I had to get off the fucking ride. This up and down roller coaster was making me nauseous. And so I had to let all of it go and say, you know what? They can do whatever they want to do, and I'm at peace with that. Because I now live in a place, because I've reprogrammed my mind to believe this, I live in a place now where I know that everything always works out. Everything is always unfolding for me for my highest and greatest good. For the expansion of who I am, for my soul. Why am I wasting my time with this stupid shit and getting wrapped up in it? It's only serving to distract me from my core mission, which is the expansion of my soul and the loving of myself internally and everything on the external as well. That's freedom for me, and maybe for you. Just letting it all go. That's scary. It started slowly. I stopped watching the news. I stopped, going on social media as much. I stopped, getting wrapped up in it all. That was what started the unraveling process, in a good way. Unraveling all the stress and anxiety around it. This giant knot, this ball of anxiety that I had. I had to ask myself, what if I could get to a place where whatever's happening in the world, I can be at peace knowing I'm taken care of. I'm exactly where I need to be. There's a higher hand leading and guiding me through all of this. And I have to have faith and trust that it's all going to work itself out. That there are certain things that we're meant to experience while we're here in this realm, in this life, in this reality, and to accept that the things that are meant to happen are meant to happen. Even the ones that make you uncomfortable or scared. They're all there because they all serve a purpose in my life. A purpose for my growth and my expansion. And so now, rather than running away from those things, or like being scared that it's going to go this way or go that way, now I just let go and say, it's all good. It's all good. Whichever way it goes is the way that divinity wanted it to go. And I'm trusting in that process. That divine process. And it's not easy. But this is how freedom is gained. That's all I got. End transmission.